Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some malicious compliance stories and our first story of the day is by ALX Walk. I'll make the quesadillas exactly as ordered, but you pay the dry cleaners. Back in the beginning of the 21st century, I was working in a cafe/sandwich shop. It was a 24/7 shop in a prime location, in an area with a lot of uni students and very active nightlife, and the road was a major artery for anyone traveling in or out of the city. When I started, as a first-year uni student trying to make some money, the shop was one of 4 of a small chain. Gary, the owner/manager, has bought the rights from the original shop. Gary was also doing quality control for the shop because at that point, every shop had separate vendors. Fast forward 2 years. The original owners decided to incorporate because they have a lot of offers for franchising and a couple of problems with quality control have appeared. So they bought back all the shops and instituted a more centralized approach to vendors. That was good for Gary because he was the owner of the building. So he became basically a salaried manager and got extra income from the rent. Initially, nothing changed. We were still number 2 in sales, product was good. Then Richard entered the picture. Richard was the new regional manager. The small chain had become big enough to reach national level, and the person responsible for quality control. He was considered something of a golden boy, having a business degree and helping with the expansion. The problem came from his ego. You see, Richard had done a cooking workshop that provides a certificate but nothing more and considered himself something of a chef. His first major change was installing a crepe station. Not restaurant quality crepes, but crepes on the go, folded like a triangle. That is important for later. While annoying to learn at the beginning, it quickly became one of our best sellers. We usually went over 10 liters of crepe mixture on a slow day. Having success with his first change, Richard decided to apply his chef training and implement some new things. At that point in time, Mexican cuisine was becoming popular in my country, due mostly to cooking shows. Richard decides to ride the trend and starts putting Mexican options on the menu. In reality, that meant 2 more set sandwiches and crepes, the ones on the board, and a few more customization options for sandwiches and crepes. And here begins the problem. As I said, Mexican cuisine was quite the new thing. Our country's cuisine is way different than the Mexican, especially on the spice level. A lot of the produce used for Mexican food was either rare or non-existent. But Richard, adamant it was another win for him, found a vendor, and the quality started to fail. We started to receive buckets of pre-made chili and queso and jars of pickled jalapenos and pre-made guacamole and pico de gallo dips. Also, blocks of white cheese labeled queso blanco. The queso was an orange paste with some red bits in it. According to hubby, under a bad light, it could pass for bad queso. And they left a very plastic taste. It reminded me of clay. One taste of that kept me away from Mexican food for a while. The jalapenos weren't jalapenos. They were pickled Thai green chilies, labeled as jalapenos, meaning they were way hotter than expected. I've never tasted the rest, but some adventurous customers that tried them weren't impressed. The only new thing that kind of sold was a plate of nachos, basically because it was Doritos covered in queso. When it was heated, it became an orange liquid, a lot of bacon, and a lot of sausage. We have complained about the quality to Gary, but he couldn't do anything more, and Richard doesn't back down. Richard is a bit upset from the low sales. He blames us, "You're not pushing them enough." And the customers, "Those barbarians couldn't recognize a filet mignon from a shank." But he sticks to his guns, and then brings corporate to the shop. Richard comes in with 4 people from HQ, 2 of them are the owners. They sit, and Richard comes and places an order of 5 quesadillas. It's a self-service shop. I ask how he wants them. "Exactly as it says on the board and prepared exactly as I told you," he replies. "Okay, sir, I will call you when they're ready," I replied, smiling. Now Richard, and all his chefy wisdom, has given us very specific instructions for the quesadillas. First, to take out of the way, it wasn't a proper quesadilla, it was a crepe. The instructions were: reheat the chili, start the crepe, place 1.5 ladles of reheated queso, add 1 ladle of the chili, add a tablespoon of chopped jalapenos, 1 tablespoon of queso blanco, half a tablespoon of guacamole, and fold. Doing that produced a liquid mess which tried really hard to escape from a thin crepe. We usually reheated the queso only for nachos. Especially in a crepe, we put it cold and let it reheat with the plate's heat to avoid the aforementioned mess. Cue malicious compliance. We, me and the other girl working, make 5 quesadillas exactly as instructed. I took the order to the table, it was corporate after all, and waited for the results. 5 people wearing white shirts and suits bite into the quesadillas. The quesadillas almost simultaneously explode, raining melted cheese and red chili on them. Some of them have bitten a jalapeno, and the heat is hitting them hard. A few choice words were heard. We brought them 2 bottles of water for the heat and 2 full packs of napkins to clean what they could. Let's say the new menu wasn't a blast with HQ. After they left, Richard came back. He was beyond angry. He approached the bench, bypassing the line, it was during one of our rush hours, and made a scene. The following dialogue is a bit censored. "You stupid witch, you made me look bad because you don't like Mexican food. You can't even follow basic instructions. The cleaning of your mess will be deducted from your pay." And some other more offensive stuff. I was standing there dumbfounded, along with a long line of customers hearing his outburst. And then Gary intervened. "Shut the freak up." "What the freak did you say?" Richard replied. "I said shut the freak up. The girls followed your instructions to the letter. Don't try to blame them for your mistake, or make them pay for your dry cleaning." "I can do what the freak I want, and when I'm finished with them, maybe I'll find another manager for this shop." "I would love to see you try." "Oh, I will! I will!" And he stormed out. Fallout. Immediately, Gary called HQ and notified about what happened. He also gave an ultimatum. If something happened to his staff, the company would need to find a new location. 3 days later, we were notified that Richard was fired. While his outburst was the main reason, it was also partially due to one of the owners having a really bad reaction to the jalapenos. A week later, the Mexican menu was removed. During that part, they found out that Richard had used the cheapest vendor for the new menu. The vendor had a reputation for shady practices, which partly explained the weird products. I stayed there until I finished uni and got a job in my field. The Mexican menu made a huge comeback 2 years before I left. This time, HQ had hired a proper chef to consult and find vendors. Now, the ingredients are as authentic as possible, and pico and guac are made daily in-house. They also have good queso now, although it took me a long time to try it. And no pre-packaged, pre-made chili. In fact, no chili at all. My repulsion to Mexican food ended when my husband took me to a proper Mexican restaurant and finally tested a proper Mexican meal. So let me ask you guys, do you feel that any restaurant should be able to get away with having frozen food? Like in this case, I'm assuming the guacamole, the pico de gallo, the chili probably, they were all pre-made frozen stuff. Should every restaurant, in your opinion, serve fresh food with never frozen ingredients? Or are some places like fast food chains okay, or is it okay in just general? Let me know in the comments down below. And our final story of the day is by Cole Carmit. Just give them the test? Okay then. Another story from my time as a first aid instructor. Hurrah! Just as a quick introduction, at the time this story took place, I was the youngest instructor within the brigade. At age 16, teaching people that were sometimes 3 times my age. However, as the youngest instructor, I was often the first choice when younger students were being taught for a course. That was the case in this session. This story comes from when I was co-teaching a rather large class with one of the master instructors for the brigade. Our students were a brigade of Navy cadets, and their captain, sergeant. I don't know ranks honestly, but this guy might as well have been a drill sergeant with the way he was treating the cadets. We will call this fellow Kevin, simply because I can't think of a creative name for him. The course was a short one, CPR with AED training, roughly a 3-hour course with one break. We go over the ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation, choking, CPR in a pair, and how to use the automated external defibrillator, or AED. The instructions we got from their command were extremely specific, as this was the military and had to follow exact instructions. For context, the master instructor was the first aid instructor for this base before anyone asks. Technically, Kevin outranked him, and I guess that makes me a civilian consultant? We got through the first part of the class with little issue, but Kevin was being a jerk towards us instructors, telling us it wasn't necessary to say that. That's common knowledge. Obviously, he didn't want to be there. I wish I can say this isn't a common thing to experience while teaching these shorter lessons, but I'd be lying. After the break, we were going to be teaching the AED and then have the final test. Kevin wasn't having it. The AED literally walks you through every single step. There is no need to go over it. It is true that AEDs do have voice directions instructing the user exactly how to use it, and visual references on the pads themselves on where to put them on the body. There are no settings on the AED other than the volume of the machine. It does all the readings themselves and adjusts accordingly. In all terms, they are designed so that anyone can use them, and in some parts of Canada, you don't actually need a certification to be permitted to use them. However, as explained, this is technically a military course, and we needed to teach exactly the way the higher-ups tell us. We tried to explain that to Kevin, but he said, "Just give them the test." As the master instructor was a lower rank than him, he had to obey. However, when the Kevin turned away to go have a smoke during the break, the master instructor took the remotes for the AED out of the cases and threw one to me. I knew exactly what he wanted me to do. For context, the AEDs we used for training are not real AEDs. They are nothing more than glorified tape recorders that cost almost $500 per unit, plus the replacement pads. All they do is light up, convey the instructions on how to use it, and then it waits for 2 minutes to repeat the cycle. However, the remote for this thing is where things get interesting. One remote works on the nearest AED to it, not just the one it comes with. With the remote, we can simulate complications with the AED. Low batteries, moisture on the pads, too much hair on the body, no shock required. The AED is pretty much plug in and use, but it is also intelligent enough when it was too dangerous to deliver a shock, and we were going to simulate that. Normally, we don't use these remotes for the final test. They are normally just used to show the different failures the machine can have and how to fix them. But the master instructor seemed to want to stick it to Kevin. We applied a little moisture to the training dummies, and when the students returned from the break, we explained we were going to the hands-on test at their sergeant's request. We explained that the AED would walk everyone through how to use it and handed them out. They were required to do 5 minutes of CPR in pairs for the hands-on test while using the AED, showing they are capable of doing it. We let them get through the first set of compressions and had the AED activate once, and then we started using the remote. Suddenly, all the AEDs were freaking out, alarms everywhere. "Wee you, moisture, moisture," kept echoing through the room. Kevin asked us what was going on, but master instructor simply said, "You told us to give them the test, so we did." Only one of the pairs out of the 20 were able to understand what was happening and took the towel that was provided to them in the AED kit and dry off the training dummy before continuing their 5 minutes. 2 students passed. 38 students failed that course. The master instructor told me that Kevin got chewed out by his superiors after he had to explain to them and our organization why nearly everyone in the course failed. 2 weeks later, I was asked to return to the base and help teach the lesson again. Another easy paycheck, nothing to complain about there. The drill sergeant was there again, but he was strangely quiet. And we got through the lesson proper in half the time it took when drill sergeant was interrupting every 5 minutes. As an added bonus, Kevin was so impressed by the class, he purchased pocket CPR masks for everyone in the class with his own money using the order form provided in the back of the first aid handbooks, giving me a fat commission check for the course as well. Master instructor told me that the superiors insisted the full commission went to me for being a civilian putting up with Kevin, or something along those lines. I don't recall exactly why. Either way, more cash for me and no complaints from me. Honestly, I feel like if there's one class you want to skip, it really shouldn't be a first aid class. If there's ever a moment where you can at least brush up on something you can use to try and save someone else's life in a dire moment, that's a really important and great thing to learn, brush up on, re-strengthen your mind, your grasp on it. I'm glad that by the end of the story, Kevin had a total change of heart and totally embraced it. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.